Wisconsin is coming around the corner. Will Alabama be ready for them?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson with the AHSA Radio Network. That's me. And Jimmy Stein with Bama Online. That's him. Want to thank our everydayers. Want to thank our newbies. And want to thank FanDuel for sponsoring this particular episode of Locked On Bama. You guys are the best. Jimmy, we got Wisconsin coming up, and you did a deep dive into Wisconsin on Bama Online where you find out a little bit more about them. And the one thing that stands out to me is I'm not quite as scared as I was.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I mean, the theme of what I wrote is basically how well we know most of these teams we play, most of the big names. I mean, we could all sit here and do a speech on Auburn and LSU and Tennessee and Georgia and their players and their coaches and their recent successes and failures. And Wisconsin's somebody we don't know very well. And so I just sort of took a fresh look. And I mean, 7-6 a year ago, that's very unimpressive. They didn't really have any big wins. They get to their bowl game and lose, but they played LSU to 35-31. And we know LSU is certainly a competitive SEC team. So it was almost like, I think the most impressive thing Wisconsin did a year ago was play LSU within 4 in a bowl game where LSU had a lot of opt-outs, including Jane Daniels. And then you look at their stats, and I give them this, and because I think this is hard to do, and I think it's the best way to play offense even in 2024. They're very balanced. I mean, they do a good job of sort of having 50-50 production between the air and the ground. That's hard to do both pretty well, and they do both pretty well. Van Dyke, very similar to Wisconsin in himself, ups and downs. The ups are impressive. The downs, not so much. Very little headline making. At the same time, he's certainly not a bad player. I'm sure the NFL is going to at least bring him into a camp. But the striking thing for me, Luke, if I could pick one thing that's striking, I think Wisconsin typically has dudes, not across the board, but Wisconsin's one of those teams that's a good bet to have an All-American or to have 2 or 3 guys that are first team all Big Ten because they're really good. Their best player is probably a safety named Hunter Wohler, who I think most of you have never heard of. He's good.
Or that Hillman kid, isn't it Hillman?
Yeah, Ricardo Hallman, pretty good. Hallman. Maybe day 2, maybe.
Well, he was All-American, and now I don't know what defined that. Like, was it first team? It was probably more like third team All-American. I hate this button right here. Like third team All-American. But whatever, he's still pretty good. But I think you're spot on. That's the thing. They've had Jonathan Taylor, and they've had, Rod Gain, and they've had all these dudes at running back forever.
Yeah.
I'm not saying their running back's not good. I'm just saying I don't know him. I mean,
most of the years you can name him. Most of the years, even though we don't play Wisconsin, obviously, most years college football fans across the country, even though you're not playing Wisconsin, you're not from the Big Ten, can name the Wisconsin running back because it's kind of a traditional power position. But they're playing 3 guys now, and they're all fine, but no one's a game breaker. They don't even have Justice Haynes or Jan Miller or anything like that, in my opinion. So
I was stunned, by the way, on the Wisconsin crossover. Ryan Herrings, I think is his name that I did it with. That was my phone, by the way. Just every time there's a weird noise that comes out of here, it's my phone is scraping across the thing, and it's got this little thing right here, and it sounds like something else. And I always want people to know that because I don't want people to be like, "Does Luke not know he's gassy?" Or what's going on? That's my phone. But anyway,
good cover story. There's no dog there. Good cover story.
Oh, I do have Zeta over here, but if she did something like what that just sounded like, she'd have been shot up to the moon. But anyway, that Ryan Herrings was like, "Hey man, I'm blown away by Alabama's running backs." He said, "I watched some of the first 2 games." He said, "Those 2 dudes are dudes." And it made me think, okay, if you blow away a Wisconsin fan with your running backs, a couple of things are true. Number one, you probably have two good running backs. And number two, they probably don't have as good a running back.
They know their backs up there.
Yeah.
They know their backs. So they're not really good, but at the same time, Alabama hasn't played great on the road since 2021. They are a legitimate Big Ten team. The Big Ten media picked this team to finish 7th. And I brought this up, and they're like, they're only picked 7th to finish in the Big Ten, and so you think they're good? Well, you know who's picked to finish 7th in the SEC? Tennessee.
Yeah, but that's different. That's different. You know that's different.
It's slightly different.
Slightly different, but different nonetheless. I do really like your point, and I want you to expound on this about Alabama on the road, because I 100% stole that information from you to talk on Sports Blitz Tuesday night about Alabama on the road, and it was eye-opening. You know, I think some of us are still back in the, hey, we go on the road and we slap people around in their own house back, you know, just like Georgia in 2008. That was 16 years ago. Yeah. You know, it's time to move on.
Yeah, I think last 16 road games, there's only like 3 losses, which is incredibly, impressive. But like 11 of the 16 games were close. 11. Yeah. And the Saban games, even on the road, used to not be close. I mean, to me, it's like the evidence of the fall. I was just talking about this with buddies before I came on the air about that specific thing. Is there was a fall in Alabama's program starting in 2021. There was a fall. But Alabama fell from clearly the best program in college football to probably 3rd, which is a fall. My issue that I get upset about is that fall is grossly exaggerated.
Yes.
And that infuriates me, because being, quote, the 3rd best program in the country and being competitive to make and do well in the playoff is a hell of an achievement. And people denigrate it like it's bad. And
well, if you want to spin,
really gets to me.
If you want to spin information one way or the other, here's a clear example of how to do it. You say, well, what did you say? Alabama's won 11 of 14 on the road. And when you play in the SEC and you've played Texas on the road in that same time, you're like, oh my God, that's awesome. I mean, that's fantastic.
Awesome.
But then the naysayer would say, yeah, but Alabama used to pip slap people on the road. And now 9 of those 11 were tight. You know, and I think the 2 blowouts may have been what
both in Starkville.
Yeah, both in Starkville. Well, there was another one that I thought about, and maybe I can't remember it.
Well, we beat the crap out of Kentucky last year.
Kentucky, I was at that game. Yeah, we did beat the heck out of them. So 9 or 8 of those were like 1-score games or in doubt towards the end. Or
11 of 16 have been tight. I think that's the exact number. 11 of the 16 have been tight. And by tight, I consider 10 points or less.
Well, right. And you think about having to a last-second comeback against Auburn with Bryce Young, a 4th and 31 against Auburn with Jalen Milroe, a last-second field goal against Texas with Will Reichert. I mean,
beat Florida in overtime in Mullen's last team in 2021. You know,
did that game go to overtime? Am I missing?
It was
something?
Overtime. Yeah.
God, I can't believe that. I forgot that went into overtime.
The A&M game was close last year, and we lost the previous time. There were, of course, the 2 losses in Baton Rouge and Knoxville in 2022, and other 2022 games that, I think there was a game at Arkansas that wasn't exactly a blowout.
Well, it was when Bryce got hurt, and that's when you remember if Jalen Milroe took off for that long run that he didn't score on unbelievably.
But and Arkansas made that closer. I think what came within 10. But
if Bryce hadn't gone out of that game, there's no doubt in my mind we wiped the floor with Arkansas. But the point still remains, because we already had a pretty good lead when Bryce went out, so that shouldn't have changed much, but it did.
Oh, yeah.
So,
which is another thing people do. I think, you can say like, well, Tennessee struggled to win that game, but they lost their starting quarterback and their backup had to come in. And you're like, well, no wonder it got close. And then when you tell the same story about Alabama, then the Alabama fans like, that's no excuse.
Yeah. Well, for
everyone else.
In our defense, Saban told us this, and we adapted to what he said. I mean, we went into that mantra and like, okay, no excuse then, no excuse. So that's what we did. But we're about to get into some.
That's a pep talk for the number 2 guy.
That's a good point. I'm going to tell everybody about Factor here. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. No matter how busy you are, you'll always find time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart, I should say, a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? Get out there, banana head. With 35, that's not in the live read, I made that part up. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Also want to tell everybody about FanDuel. You know, they're the sponsor of this particular podcast's episode today. And FanDuel is just the best. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube TV, and that's awesome. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime you want to, bro. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all Sunday 9:15 pregame moneyline bets. Profit Boost will be live starting Thursday 9/12, which is today. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sports book. All right, let's get into some predictions here, Jimmy. Let's go with the score first. I think that's just the easiest thing, because what I don't want to do is, like, we run out of time sometimes. We're like, oh, this whole episode was supposed to be about this, and we got sidetracked, and then we forgot to talk about it. So let's do the score first. I'm going to say Alabama wins this game 45-17. Now, that is a mollywhopping. I understand. We're due. It's coming. Somebody's going to take the brunt of my anger. And your
anger is a factor in this game?
It's either going to be Wisconsin or my dog when I get home. And my dog's over here like crossing paws going, please let it be Wisconsin. No, I'm serious. I wouldn't hurt my dog. I love my dog. But anyway, yeah, somebody's got to take a whooping from Bama. And it's time. A good team, not some iffy team. A name brand. We've got to beat up on a name brand, and we're going to do it this weekend. And I just looked at Wisconsin, like their roster and some of their people, and I read your synopsis and everything, and I just don't believe Wisconsin can hang. I just don't. And if they can hang, not only will I come on here and say I'm sorry, I will come on here and say I'm worried about the rest of the season.
I think if this was on a neutral field or in Tuscaloosa, I would like Luke's score. I'd probably pick something similar on a neutral field or Tuscaloosa. I think playing up there, I'm just a little concerned about the past road games, just playing on the road in general in 2024 against a good competitive big conference team. I have Alabama winning 34-17. I know that's closer than Luke's thing. 34-17 isn't necessarily close. In fact, it's covering what's a pretty decent line. And I do think Alabama will cover. What I can't make my mind up about in terms of how I think the game will play out, Luke, I think either the first quarter or the fourth quarter is going to be when Wisconsin makes a charge. Like they start off hot and it's tight after the first quarter, and then Alabama pulls away. Or does Alabama just come out kicking chicken, as you say, and then Wisconsin scores a little bit in the fourth quarter to make the score more respectable. But 34-17 is what I have it. But I'm actually going to feel pretty good about it because what I want to do, what I want to feel like, Luke, your anger is a factor in this game. I understand. What Jimmy cares about is I would love to leave this game feeling confident in picking Alabama to beat Georgia. And beating Wisconsin by Luke's score would do that for sure. I think I can still feel confident about beating Georgia even with a closer game with Wisconsin. But that's what I would like. I don't want to leave the Wisconsin game feeling like Georgia is hopeless. That being said, there is no way that Georgia's going to be hopeless. We all have to remember that literally just a few months ago, Alabama played horrible and should have lost to a bad Auburn team and beat Georgia 7 days later.
Yeah.
So there's no reason that Wisconsin really has anything to do with the Georgia outcome. But I do think attitude matters, and I would just like to leave Wisconsin going, you know what? Georgia's in for 60 tough minutes here.
I'm with you on that. That's the thing is I want to go up there and sort of – we're not going to reestablish, Bama 2011 defense or anything. That's fine. That's not happening in this game. I understand. We're not going to go up there and make people think we're the second coming of Tua and the rideouts. I understand that too. But I think we can establish more of a scary offense and a frightening defense than what we've shown here recently, even though we've only given up 16 points in 2 games. And one touchdown. And that's all to be lauded. But it does take a little bit of the edge off when, number one, you consider the competition. And number two, you consider, South Florida also did rush for 200 yards. Right. That sort of does take a little of the edge off is all I'm saying. I'm proud of what we're doing. I'm not down on it. I'm just saying this is a golden opportunity to go into Big Ten country. And by the way, Texas went into Michigan and slapped them around. And I would say the talent disparity is at least very comparable. I mean, maybe Alabama isn't as good as Texas this year. That's very fair to say. And maybe Michigan's a little better than Wisconsin. But the talent disparity, I think, is very true, is very comparable.
I like that compare. If Alabama should beat Wisconsin as bad as Texas beat Michigan. I agree. They should. But, hey, the road's tricky. And again, give Texas a lot of credit. I picked Texas to win the SEC. I think they're a fantastic football team this year, and I think Sark's on a roll, and I think Quinn Ewers is a dude. They're just full of dudes. They remind me a little bit of the best Saban teams, to be honest. I mean, I know that's going to upset a lot of people, but I mean, in terms of the number of Texas players that I think will be first-team All-Americans and first-round picks, and how they're going to Godzilla stomp their way through most of the season, is very Saban-like, to be honest.
Over-unders for some Bama stuff in particular. Over-under on penalties, 9.5, Jimmy.
Under.
I'm not looking at FanDuel or anything because, by the way, I just pulled up FanDuel and, they still don't have Ryan Williams statistics, Ryan Williams bet stuff. And maybe it's because he's only 17. They're like, we can't let you bet on 17-year-olds. I don't know.
Discuss him in a casino-style atmosphere because he's too young. He's a minor.
It's like he can't even legally buy ice cream. So, yeah, we can't bet on him yet. No, 9.5. I'm going to go over until proven wrong. I'm going to go over. I hate it.
I get it. I mean, I get it. Sometimes teams are like this. Sometimes it's not a one-game thing. Sometimes teams are just, they got penalized double digits every week. Some teams are like that. And this could be that type team. I don't think so. Could be.
All right. Over, under, Jalen Milroe passing yards, 250.
Under, conservative game plan on the road.
Over. Over with a bullet. 300 yards for Jalen Milroe. 300. That's a Luke Robinson guarantee.
Oh, wow. Nice.
My dog barked in the background. She's like, yes, I feel like I'm safe when Luke gets home. There, see?
Let's
see. How about this? Jam and Justice combine yards rushing, 180.
Over.
That's my man.
I got a monster game for Justice Haynes this weekend. Monster.
Does Ryan Williams score a touchdown? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, now we're cooking with gas. I'm on board now. All right, we're going to come back and talk about some predictions for college football all around. It's just not a great week for college football, but we're going to do it. But of course, I'm going to tell you about LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best. Love me some LinkedIn. I love getting the emails from LinkedIn. Like, hey, so and so wants to connect with you. I'm like, okay, yeah, I like that. It makes me feel good. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're not looking in the right place, yo. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, they'll apply. There's no doubt about that. Okay, so we'll start, sort of SEC centric. The next game I'd want to see besides Alabama, Wisconsin is LSU, South Carolina. And it's very crazily on at the exact same time of 11 o'clock, which stinks. But I'm telling you, Jimmy, I know LSU's a 7-point favorite. And I know South Carolina's offense is totally inept, and I thought Kentucky was going to bury him last week. I've done a complete 190, as a friend of mine once said. And
180 plus. That's 180 plus.
Well, the impetus of that story is the friend of mine was he was much older guy, but he was a coach over at the junior college in Lake City, and he was telling the story about how the putt went like. He meant to say a complete 360, which is even crazier. Like it goes around the cup and comes back at you.
Oh, I'm familiar.
Yeah, he said it did a complete 190, and everybody was like, so it went directly over and then took a slight left? Like, what? Did you have a protractor? How did you even know? Like a 190. And like there is no complete 190. Like you just do a complete 190.
Half 180.
This is also the same guy.
180.
This is also the same guy when his girlfriend got out of rehab. He brought her 2 bottles of champagne in the limousine to celebrate. So there was something not right with this guy. But
I understand his way of thinking with both stories. I kind of
get it. I kind of get both of them. But it's like
a shame that I'm sort of on the same wavelength as this guy.
God, I know I'm supposed to get into the predictions, but the other thing he did one time, my dad told a joke around this table full of people, and the guy started laughing so hard he put his head down and he hit his head on the table, and it made kind of like a goose egg on his forehead. And then everybody really started laughing. Well, meanwhile, the waitress comes around and gives everybody their water and whatever. Then somebody else walks in. Everybody's like crying. And the guy goes, "What's so funny?" And he goes, I won't say his name just because, but he goes, "Well, I'll tell you something. Ricky said something hilarious." And I went, "Ha, ha, ha." And I put my head down like this. Well, he didn't know the waitress put his glass like right here. And so it made a circle around his goose egg where he and now he had a goose egg that was highlighted, and everybody lost it. Like whatever they were doing, they're like, "We can't do this anymore. We all have to go home and just walk this one off. This is too funny." So anyway,
that was a great I Love Lucy episode.
he was a funny dude. But anyway, okay, LSU, South Carolina.
LSU wins. They have more good players than South Carolina's got.
I'm going to say closer than you think. I'm not even making a prediction. I'm not making a prediction because I really think South Carolina's got a shot here because LSU has no running game, and their defense, I'm not convinced, is a whole heck of a lot better than last year. So, yes, South Carolina, see, what South Carolina does well, watching them play Kentucky and even watching them play Old Dominion, they rush the passer with ferocity.
Well,
I wish we had a couple of their pass rushers.
Their 2 pass rushers are outstanding, and Dylan Stewart, he was a 5-star plus, and he might have been underrated.
Yeah, he's a dude's dude. I mean, I would take him on this team in a heartbeat. Boston College, Missouri, that turned into everybody's like, hey, this turned into a ranked-on-ranked game? How did that happen?
I'm not sure how it happened. I mean, Florida State's had it happen, but Missouri's much better than Boston College. They'll make Boston College look like Boston College. Florida State did not. I mean, I think BC might be a 6-6 bowl team, which is a good story with Bill O'Brien. But Missouri big here. Missouri by 15 to 20, maybe more.
I'm with you. Ole Miss at Wake Forest, which is not. It's only surprising in that why would anybody think anybody would want to schedule this game? This is a bowl matchup, not a season matchup.
At one point, Wake was pretty good, under this coach, real competitive, and that hasn't happened. I don't think NIL has treated the Wake Forest NIL era has not treated Wake Forest well. Wake Forest is bad. They probably need a regime change and an NIL makeover. Ole Miss by 1 million.
Yeah, I'm with you. Lane Kiffin is trying. Did you know, I think Jackson Dart's completing 80%, 87% of his passes?
Yeah, I don't think Ole Miss Saban era Alabama would go into Wake and win this game 40-7 on autopilot.
Yeah, agreed.
Ole Miss might score 70 because it matters to them for some reason. I think Ole Miss is excited about being good, and they might score seriously in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, and again, that's why I'm going to go back to Ole Miss is going to beat LSU and things like that, because Ole Miss has got at least a semblance of a defense, and I'm just not sure LSU does yet, and they have no running game. So there's, let's see, a couple of other Southeastern Conference games. Georgia, Kentucky. I mean, not look, close. I was moderately excited about this. I bet you ABC wishes they could flip-flop the LSU and Georgia games, don't you?
Oh, that's a great point. That's so true. This is the, by the way, we loved when ABC and ESPN got the SEC deal and said, hey, we're going to announce kickoff times and networks much earlier than y'all are used to under CBS. Y'all are going to love this. This is why CBS didn't do it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
CBS wouldn't have got this wrong, and ABC got it wrong.
Yeah, and it's just a shame because South Carolina at night would have been a great environment. It would have been reminiscent of an LSU environment at night. That would have made it a lot more fun. And Kentucky was so bad last week that I just don't know that anybody can even – I mean, if the scroller comes around and you're watching some other game and they're like, Georgia's only up on Kentucky 17-14 late in the third, okay, people will turn it on. But what I think everybody's going to see here is Georgia is up 45 to just a very little bit, and nobody's going to watch it.
No, I agree. I think this is just almost a boring game. Last year was Kentucky. I don't know anybody coming off that South Carolina game. Well, I hate this word vibes. I'm not a vibes guy. Kentucky's got terrible vibes right now.
I'm with you, and I don't know where they got them from because it seems like they're one of the few teams.
I think they made a mistake at quarterback, and hey, I'm happy to eat those words. I'm kind of rooting for Vandegrift because his sister is going to play softball for Alabama this season, so I'm sort of rooting for Vandegrift. He's part of the family now with the sister being an Alabama softball player, but boy, he was rough last week against South Carolina, and it's probably going to be worse against Georgia.
And here's the other thing. Sometimes when your coach flirts with another school, like most of the time you're like, oh, my God, yeah, he's coming back. He loves us so much. Sometimes you're like, hey, if you're going to keep flirting with everybody else, why are you marrying me? And I think Gus Malzahn had that happen with Auburn when he flirted with Arkansas. And some Auburn people say, well, he didn't really flirt. It was just a rumor. There was some flirtation there. And
I'm not going to listen to Kentucky fans or Texas A&M fans about Stoops' involvement with the A&M job because I've just learned my lesson a long time ago, never to take what's being said publicly for face value.
True. Very true.
And I'm just saying all that to float out there. There's also the very real possibility Stoops pursued the heck out of that job at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I know what he says now, but
he pursued the heck out of it. I'm convinced of that.
Probably, considering how much it pays.
He's stupid not to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so I think it's quarterback, and I'll tell you what else. And Walford's back up there. Kentucky's got a serious offensive line issue, and I'm not picking on Walford, but I mean, come on. Against South Carolina, they were useless.
Look, everybody was on Wilkin Formby. They had 5 Wilkin Formbies at his worst against South Carolina. And I don't mean that as a shot at Wilkin Formby. I'm saying Wilkin Formby's going to get better. I don't know that Kentucky's going to get better.
No, their 5 offensive linemen had to have all graded out less than 50%.
God.
It was worse than what me and Luke are making it out to be.
Like that's like the no offensive left behind program.
South Carolina's defensive line's pretty good, by the way. Former Alabama player Monkel Goodwine on that defensive line. I don't think he could get many snaps. That in and of itself shows me that they must be pretty good.
They got dudes. All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back sometime after the game Saturday. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.